Was this the greatest defeat of all time? Battle of Cannae 216 BCE. By the summer of 216 BCE, Rome had changed from a small city-state into the Mediterranean's unstoppable powerhouse. The Roman army, built on discipline, the same equipment for everyone, and never-ending growth, had taken over the Italian peninsula, beaten the Samnites, taken in the Etruscans, and even defeated Carthage, the greatest sea power of the time, in the First Punic War. But now Hannibal's ghost, the Carthaginian threat, returns to Italian soil. A ghost from that past victory was walking on Italian land again. The Roman Republic, led by Consul Gaius Terentius Varro, had marched an army of over 80,000 men, bigger than ever before, into Apulia. Their goal was to completely destroy Hannibal Barca. Full of confidence, they thought the Carthaginians would be easily crushed under the huge number of Roman soldiers. But before we see how Hannibal's trap worked, I want your opinion. If you were Consul Varro seeing the enemy army in front of you, what would you do? Comment right now. Full attack or hold the line? The Roman war machine, 700,000 strong and ready for battle, the Roman army had never been bigger. Polybius tells us that Rome could, in theory, put 700,000 foot soldiers and 70,000 horse soldiers from its Italian allies into the field, numbers that were much bigger than any other power at the time. For this battle, they had called up 8 legions plus the same number of allied forces, almost 90,000 men, the largest army Rome had ever put together in one place. Across the dusty plains stood Hannibal's army, smaller, made up of many different peoples, but tough from years of fighting and great victories. Hannibal had shocked the ancient world by crossing the Alps, destroying Roman armies at the Trebia and Lake Trasimene. Each victory had been a lesson in new battle ideas. The son of Hannibal Barca had been raised for Hannibal's oath, the boy who swore eternal war against Rome this moment. As a boy of 9, he had sworn a holy promise to never be a friend to Rome. This was not just kid drama, it was family training. His father's anger over the First Punic War had made a home full of thoughts of revenge. Now that boy had grown into a general of amazing skill, with sharp eyes that seemed to look right into a person's soul, as Polybius described. Alpine crossing, Hannibal's impossible march that shocked the world. Roman people spoke of Hannibal in quiet, scared voices, a monster who had done the impossible. The crossing of the Alps alone, which cost him 40,000 men and most of his elephants, had been planned carefully with good information about mountain paths, weather, and local tribes. The huge loss was thought worth it to surprise Rome, and surprise them he did, but Rome had changed its plan. After Fabian's strategy, Rome's controversial delay and harass tactics, losing battles, they had made Fabius Maximus dictator. His plan was simple, but it worked. Avoid big battles while attacking Hannibal's food-gathering groups, cutting off supplies by burning the land, and stopping allies from switching sides. The plan worked, but to the Roman people, it looked cowardly. By 216 BCE, the anger in Rome. Political pressure, Varro's rise, and the demand for aggressive action had reached its limit. Varro was elected consul because he promised strong attacks, saying he would end Hannibal's time in Italy with one big blow. The Senate gave permission for an enormous army and gave a simple order: find battle and destroy the enemy. Varro, a man from a common family, unusual for a consul at this time, had built his political life by speaking to the people's meetings while saying the senators were too careful. His fighting experience was only small commands in Gaul. He had never fought an enemy like Hannibal or led more than 2 legions, but what he lacked in experience, he made up for in confidence. His co-consul, Lucius Aemilius Paulus, was from the noble clash of consuls, Varro's populism versus Paulus's caution families. A veteran of the Illyrian Wars, Paulus understood fighting that was not in straight lines and was careful with Hannibal. But he could not openly go against the Senate's orders or look cowardly in front of the Roman people. This difference between them would turn out to be deadly. Hannibal, who understood how Romans thought better than they did themselves, saw a chance in their pride. He purposely put his army near the grain storage at Cannae, creating a problem that would force the Romans to act. As the August sun rose over Apulia, the rocky plains got very hot under a burning sun. Hannibal's battle line looked almost like an insult because it seemed so weak. His center, made mostly of Celtic warriors, stuck out toward the Romans like an open dare. It was bait, and Varro was eager to bite it. The stage was ready. The Romans saw an easy win, but Hannibal had just started a deadly game of chess where the pieces were living men. To see how this trap worked, subscribe to Dark History class. The summer of 216 BCE found Rome boiling with anger and shame. For 2 years, Hannibal Barca had made fools of their generals, killed their legions, and walked freely across Italian land, an insult no Roman could accept. The disaster at Lake Trasimene still hurt in everyone's memory. A whole consul's army had been trapped and killed, with 15,000 Romans cut down in one single morning. The consul himself had died there. His body was never found in the bloody water. Rome had never known such shame, never in the Republic's history, people whispered in the forum, had a foreign enemy walked freely on Italian land for so long. Roman pride was built on attacking and winning battles. Now that pride was broken under Carthaginian feet. The Roman Senate's answer was very Roman, huge force. If Hannibal had beaten 2 legions, then 8 would crush him. If his cavalry had beaten theirs, then they would bring twice as many horsemen. If his plans were better, they would drown his smart ideas in a sea of Roman swords. Rome's answer was huge in size. Instead of the usual 2 legions for each consul, the Senate allowed 8 legions plus the same number of allied forces, about 90,000 men. Polybius describes it as the best army organization ever made, with its maniple system that lets soldiers move in smart ways while keeping tight control. The manipular system, Rome's revolutionary military innovation maniple system, was Rome's best new idea for war. Unlike the Greek phalanx, which fought as one big stiff block, Roman legions were set up in 3 separate lines. The Hastati, the youngest soldiers, in front, the Principes, experienced men, in the second line, and the Triarii, the oldest fighters, held back as reserves. Each line was broken into maniples, small groups that could move on their own while still keeping the whole army together. This checkerboard pattern let fresh soldiers move forward through openings when the front men got tired. Each Roman soldier was a part of this great machine. Their gear was exactly the same for everyone. The big rectangular scutum shield, the deadly pilum javelin made to bend when it hit and ruin enemy shields, the short gladius sword for stabbing in close fights. Their training focused on staying together, following orders, and what Livy called disciplina, a word that meant not just army rules, but duty to the city and doing what is right. This was the Roman way of war, careful, too big to stop, and never giving up. For hundreds of years, it had beaten all kinds of enemies. Each loss just made them call up more soldiers, more legions, more allies, until no one could fight back. As Pyrrhus of Epirus had famously said after a costly win, another victory like that against the Romans, and we are finished. In Rome, people were angry and wanted revenge. Shops showed rough pictures of Hannibal, some making him look half animal. Mothers scared children with stories of the Carthaginian monster who ate Roman soldiers. In bars, people who had never held a sword explained loudly how Hannibal should be beaten. "Cut off his food," shouted one shop owner. "Burn the land in front of him," said another. "No, force him into battle with all our strength," said a third, and everyone agreed. The anger with Fabius Maximus' plan of waiting and bothering the enemy had reached its limit. His idea, stay away from big battles while cutting off Hannibal's food by burning the land, was working, but too slowly for Roman pride. They called him Cunctator, the delayer, and said quietly that he had no courage. But who would lead this huge army? The consul elections of 216 BCE showed what the people wanted. Romans wanted blood, Carthaginian blood, and they chose men who would give it to them. Gaius Terentius Varro became the people's hero. Born to a common family, unusual for a consul at this time, Varro had built his political life by speaking to the people's meetings while saying the senators were too careful. He promised one simple thing: find Hannibal and destroy him in one big battle. We have the men, we have the money. What we lack is the courage to use them. His speeches in the Roman Forum got huge cheers. His plan was simple: make the biggest army in Roman history and crush Hannibal in one big battle. The other choice, keeping bothering him while staying away from fights, looked like giving up to a people who thought winning battles was the same as being a good citizen. Romans did not want another year of Hannibal burning farms and trying to make allies switch sides. They wanted victory, complete and right now. The noble senators looked at Varro with clear dislike. His fighting experience was only small commands in Gaul. He had never fought a big enemy or led more than 2 legions. His ideas about war came from books, not real fights. One senator was heard in a private dinner saying, "Varro knows politics, not war. He will lead us to disaster," but people kept those worries private. In public, the Senate gave huge support and money for the war. To balance Varro's hot excitement, they chose Lucius Aemilius Paulus for the second consul job. A veteran of the Illyrian Wars, Paulus understood fighting that was not in straight lines and how enemies think. His time as consul in 219 BCE had gone well, showing he was good, even if not super great. When he spoke in the Senate, his words had the weight of real experience. We must not think this enemy is weak. Hannibal does not fight the way we do. He tries not to meet our strength, but to use it against us. Paulus had studied reports of Hannibal's wins at the Trebia and Trasimene. At the Trebia River, Hannibal had used hidden soldiers and a fake retreat to pull the Romans into a terrible trap. At Lake Trasimene, he had put his whole army in morning fog along a narrow road, closing a trap with no way out. Each loss showed not just smart battle plans, but deep knowledge of how Romans think. Hannibal always used Roman anger and the way they always did the same things, but few wanted to hear warnings. The Roman people wanted action. As spring turned to summer, Rome's soldiers gathered. The size was never seen before: 80,000 foot soldiers and 6,000 horse soldiers. Young men ran to join, excited to be part of the army that would kick Hannibal out of Italy. Centurions trained their men without stop, turning farmers and workers into the most disciplined fighters the world had ever seen. The sound of training filled the air. The regular hit of wooden practice swords, the grunt of men in fake fights, the shout of centurions fixing lines, the smell of sweat, leather, and metal filled the camps. Blacksmiths worked day and night fixing gear, sharpening swords, and repairing armor. The army's huge size seemed to promise victory. How could any general, even one as smart as Hannibal, beat such huge numbers? Roman war plans were based on what had worked before. Bringing huge force together had worked against Pyrrhus, the Samnites, and Carthage itself in the First Punic War. Each Roman soldier carried about 60 pounds of gear: helmet, armor, shield, weapons, food. The legions moved like one giant living thing, their supply wagons stretching for miles. Engineers marched with them, ready to build bridges, walls, and machines for attacking cities. This was not just an army, it was Roman power on the move. Paulus watched the getting ready with growing worry. Something about the excitement around him felt empty. He had studied reports of Hannibal's past wins, how the Carthaginian had used Roman attack spirit against them, but his worries were ignored. "We will crush him with our numbers," the other officers told him. "He cannot stand against 8 legions. Paulus had tried to explain the problem with cavalry. Hannibal's Numidian light riders and Celtic heavy horse soldiers were better both in number and skill than Rome's horse soldiers. But horse soldiers had never decided Roman battles before. Foot soldiers won battles, and Rome had plenty of foot soldiers. Varro, at the same time, loved his moment. Standing in front of the gathered legions, he promised glory and revenge. "Men of Rome, for too long, this Carthaginian dog has ruined our lands and killed our brothers. The time for waiting is over. The time for half actions is done. When we meet Hannibal, we will wipe away the shame of Trasimene and the Trebia. We will show him what it means to face the full power of Rome. The roar of agreement echoed across the plain, 80,000 voices shouting for victory, but in the shadows, doubt stayed. Older soldiers, who had fought Hannibal before, shared knowing looks. They remembered how fast victory had turned to death, how the Carthaginians seemed to know what Romans would do, guessing their every move. "He's different," one old centurion told a younger one. "He does not fight like the Gauls or the Greeks. He fights like something completely new." By early August, the two consul armies' August heat, the brutal Apulian environment that shaped the battle, had joined in Apulia, making the largest Roman field army ever put together. The summer heat pressed down hard as they marched southeast, following news of Hannibal's movements. The great war machine moved slowly, its huge size made fast moves impossible. 8 legions and their allies stretched for miles across the dusty land, kicking up clouds of dust seen from far away. The heat was terrible. Men marched in full armor under a Mediterranean sun that gave no mercy. Water became precious, with soldiers saving their supplies between rivers and wells. The land itself seemed mean. Apulia in August is a hard place. The rocky ground baked hard, few plants lived under the hot sun, and temperatures often went over 35 degrees C or 95 degrees F. Men fell from heat sickness, even without fighting, and the doctors worked all the time to keep the army able to fight. News reports came every day. Hannibal had taken Lippincott, the Roman food storage at Cannae, a small town near the Aufidus River. The grain buildings there held important food for the area. This taking created a problem that forced a Roman answer. By taking Cannae's grain, Hannibal showed what Carthage could do. While forcing Romans into a fight place he picked, proof shows Hannibal knew a lot about Roman battle ways, from Italian allies giving secrets, deserters from Roman armies, and watching past fights. His choice of Cannae, as the battlefield showed, he understood Roman thinking and battle limits. In the command tent, anger sparked between the consuls. "He's tricking us," Paulus said, pointing to the map. "This place helps his cavalry. The open ground gives his Numidian riders room to move. The river limits how we can line up. He's picking the ground on purpose." Varro pushed the worry away with a hand wave. "Let him pick the ground. Our numbers make the ground not matter. We will smash his center with our foot soldier mass, then roll up his sides. That's exactly what he wants," Paulus answered. "Remember the Trebia, remember Trasimene." Each time we attacked just the way he thought we would. Those were smaller armies, Varro said strongly. "This is different. We have 8 legions, and he has the same brain that destroyed our past armies. Numbers alone will not save us if he outsmarts us." Roman battle ways focused on pushing forward hard, breaking enemy lines with steady pressure. This way had worked against phalanx armies and barbarian groups. Why would Hannibal be different? The argument ended with no winner, with Varro's last words hanging in the air. "Tomorrow we will see whose plan is right." Among the regular soldiers, confidence was still high. Older soldiers told new men stories of past Roman wins, how following orders always beat barbarian tricks. The newer soldiers listened with big eyes, excited for their chance at glory. "Hannibal's men are tired," one centurion told his troops. "They have marched across Italy for 2 years. No new soldiers living off the land. We are fresh, well-fed, and twice their number." Another added, "Their army is a mix of Gauls, Spaniards, Africans. They hardly speak the same language. How can they work together against our trained maniples?" What these men did not know, what Roman spies had missed, was that Hannibal's army from many lands was not weak but strong. The different kinds gave battle choices and special skills. The Romans saw different kinds as a problem, not a new way to fight. They thought many languages meant trouble talking, split loyalty instead of strength, battle choices, special skills. The Celtic warriors gave wild attack spirit and scared enemies. The Spanish foot soldiers gave training and their deadly falcata swords. The African troops brought professional fighting with gear taken from past wins. The Numidian cavalry gave the best speed and bothering skills. Each part had its job in Hannibal's plan of destruction. The strange command way of the Roman army added another weak spot. The two consuls were to take turns commanding each day, a political rule that made battle problems. One day, Paulus would lead, asking for care. The next, Varro would push for attack. This system is crazy against a man like Hannibal, Paulus told a trusted officer. We need one clear plan, not this political deal. It is the Roman way, the officer answered with a shrug. Two consuls, taking turns commanding against Hannibal, the Roman way may kill us. By August 1st, the Roman army had made a camp about 6 miles from Hannibal's position. Paulus, in command that day, ordered scouts to look around but stayed away from full fighting. Tomorrow is soon enough, he told his officers. Let the men rest. Let our scouts tell us about the ground and where the enemy is. But the next day would be Varro's turn to command. August 2nd, 216 BCE began clear and hot by 6:00 a.m. The temperature was already climbing fast from the cool morning toward what promised to be a burning midday. The camp woke up with practice speed. Men ate fast, checked gear, and got into their units. The air filled with the metal smell of armor being put on. The leather smell of shields and belts, and the dust raised by thousands of moving feet. Varro woke before sunrise, his mind made up. Today would be his day of glory, the day he would destroy Hannibal and make his name live forever in Roman stories. He ordered the army to pack up and move forward right away. The officers looked at each other but obeyed. Orders went out and the great machine started to move. Paulus made one last try to ask for care. The men are tired from yesterday's march. The heat will be terrible today. Let us wait. Choose our time. Varro's answer was sharp. I did not come here to hide behind walls like Fabius. I came to fight. Today we fight. Hannibal is no normal enemy. Paulus kept trying. He wants us to attack. That should make us stop and think. Of course he wants us to attack. What choice does he have? His army is half our size. Waiting only helps him find some new trick. We will smash through his center before he can answer. Paulus became quiet. The choice was made. As a noble consul, he stood for Senate honor against people pressure. His care about Hannibal showed smart thinking, but looked cowardly to Roman people who had won for hundreds of years. He could not go against clear Senate orders or look like he had no courage in front of the men. The Roman army lined up in the usual way, but with changes because they had so many men. Instead of normal maniple spaces, the legions made their lines tighter to push harder in front. Polybius describes the lineup. The Romans made their line much deeper than usual, the depth being double the front, 90,000. Roman and allied soldiers stood in shining rows, their bronze armor catching the early sunlight. The sameness was beautiful and scary. Same shields, same javelins, same short swords. The Roman battle line stretched nearly 2 miles, a metal wall of trained men, the low sound of 90,000 men. Getting ready filled the air. Fixing armor, checking weapons, quiet prayers to Mars. Roman army speed could be heard. Centurions' orders, standard bearers getting in place, the regular clang of gear being readied, dust, sweat, leather, and bronze. The metal smell of weapons mixed with nervous sweat. Horses and mules added their own smells, while morning cooking fires added wood smoke to everything. Across the field, Hannibal's lineup looked almost like an insult in how weak it seemed. His center was made of Hannibal's bait, the deliberate weakness that lured Rome in. Celtic and Spanish foot soldiers set in a shape that curved out toward the Romans like an open dare. The Celtic warriors, about 20,000 Gaul fighters, many with no shirts in their usual way, carried long swords and oval shields. Their look was meant to scare. Painted bodies, big mustaches, gold rings around their necks. They shouted insults across the field, banging swords on shields. The Spanish foot soldiers placed next to the Celts showed how Carthaginian fighting had changed. They used gear taken from Romans mixed with their own weapons, the famous falcata sword, small round shields, chaetra, and javelins made for throwing or stabbing. But the hidden power of Hannibal's line was missed by Roman leaders. On each side, hidden by lighter troops, stood Hannibal's African foot soldiers. These were trained soldiers, wearing armor and weapons taken from earlier wins. From far away, They looked just like Roman legionaries, a key part of Hannibal's trick. Even more worrying was Hannibal's horse-soldier lineup. On his left side, Numidian light riders under Hannibal. About 4,000 riders on small, fast horses. On the right, Celtic and Spanish heavy horse soldiers, about 6,000 riders on bigger war horses. Together, they had almost twice as many horse soldiers as Rome. This seeming weakness seemed to prove everything Romans expected. The barbarians were offering themselves to be killed. Paulus, seeing the lineup, felt a cold feeling that had nothing to do with the morning air. Something was wrong. The line was too clearly weak, too inviting, but Varro saw only the chance he had dreamed of. Sound. The advance, Varro ordered. Full attack all across the line. Roman trumpets sounded the move forward. 80,000 foot soldiers started walking ahead in perfect order, their hobnailed sandals, caligae, making a steady thunder on the hard ground. Livy's words still ring across the years. The Romans moved forward with such confidence that they seemed not to be going to battle, but to the killing of their enemies. The choice was made. Varro had sent Rome into a big fight on his day. But to get the victory he wanted so badly, his legions would have to walk right into the mouth of Hannibal's perfect trap. Dawn painted the eastern sky in shades of gold and red as nearly 200,000 men got ready to kill each other. August 2nd, 216 BCE. A date that would soon burn into Roman minds as the darkest day in their history. The battlefield, a stretch of flat, dusty ground near the Aufidus River, was quiet for one last moment. Then came the horns. Roman trumpets sounded the advance, their loud notes carrying across the plain. 80,000 foot soldiers began moving forward in perfect order, their hobnailed sandals making a steady thunder on the hard ground. Step, step, step. The sound itself was a weapon, the never-stopping approach of Roman training, as sure as death. From above, the Roman advance looked like a giant rectangle of bronze and red moving as one living thing across the dusty plain. The tight formations, deeper than Roman armies usually used, made a wall of never-seen-before mass. Front stretched nearly 2 miles, but was unusually deep, with each man having less room than normal. Varro's plan was simple. Huge front pushing would break Hannibal's center just by the weight of numbers. In the front rows, the Hastati, the youngest Roman soldiers, held their pilum javelins with tight hands. Behind them, the Principes' seasoned fighters checked their lines, ready to push through any opening. In the third line, the Triarii, the oldest and most experienced soldiers, watched with the cold eyes of men who had seen everything war can give. Forward, keep the line. Centurions shouted orders, their vine sticks tapping shields back into place, keeping the steady advance even and unstoppable. The ground itself seemed to shake under this giant force. As they moved forward, huge dust clouds rose from the rocky soil, baked hard by summer heat. The fine dust coated throats and noses, making each breath harder, each step more tiring in the growing heat. On top of small hill, Hannibal Barca watched the Roman advance with the calm interest of a scientist watching an experiment whose result he already knew. Polybius described him with sharp eyes that seemed to see into the soul. And in this moment, those eyes saw exactly what he had expected. Roman pride walking right into his trap. "They come just as I thought," he said to Hannibal, his cavalry leader. "See how they have made their lines tight. They make our chance for us." Beside him, his officers, a group from many lands, Carthaginians, Spaniards, Gauls, and Africans, watched in silence. As Hannibal calmly gave orders. Unlike the Romans, whose orders always followed strict rules, Hannibal's commands came in many languages, made to fit what each group of soldiers could do best. Hannibal's battle line looked almost like an insult because it seemed so weak. His center was made of Celtic and Spanish foot soldiers set in a shape that curved outward toward the Romans like a clear dare. Unlike the stiff Roman lines, Hannibal's battle line moved with planned wild energy. The Celtic warriors, about 20,000 Gaul fighters, made the center bulge. Many stood with no shirts in their usual way, their bodies painted with war patterns, gold rings shining around their necks. Their long swords and oval shields looked very different from the same gear every Roman had. Spanish foot soldiers, placed next to the Celts, showed how Carthaginian fighting had grown smarter, mixing gear taken from Romans with old Spanish weapons. The deadly falcata sword, with its curved blade made for powerful cuts, would work very well in the close fighting that was coming. But the hidden power of Hannibal's line stayed unseen by Roman eyes. On each side, hidden by ground shape and lighter soldiers, stood Hannibal's African foot soldiers. These were trained professional fighters wearing armor and weapons taken from earlier wins. From far away, they looked just like Roman legionaries. Very important part of Hannibal's trick. Most dangerous of all was Hannibal's horse soldier line. On the left side, Numidian light riders under Hannibal. About 4,000 riders on small fast horses without saddles or bridles, guiding their horses with just knee pressure and a small rope around the neck. On the right side, Celtic and Spanish heavy cavalry, about 6,000 horse soldiers on bigger war horses, their armor shining in the morning sun. Together, they had almost twice as many horse soldiers as Rome, and unlike Roman riders, who were mostly rich citizens with little training, these were professional fighters who lived and died on horseback. As the Roman giant army moved forward, the morning heat started to grow stronger. By 8:30 a.m., the temperature was already climbing toward what would become a very hot day, even for the Mediterranean. Modern army experts say this weather played a big part in how the battle turned out. The Romans moved forward with strong, careful confidence. Their lines had taken over the known world. Their training was famous. Their gear was exactly the same and perfect. What could possibly stop them? The enemy center is already shaking, one officer said to Varro. See how their line sticks out. They are scared of our advance. Varro nodded, looking happy. They should be scared. Today, Rome gets its revenge. What neither of them understood was that the bulge in Hannibal's line was on purpose, a planned weak spot made to pull the Romans forward into a hold that would turn into a death grip. At 30 yards, the Roman front lines stopped. For a moment, throw Pila came the order, and thousands of javelins flew through the air toward the Carthaginian center. The special whistle of these weapons, made with soft iron parts that bent when they hit to ruin enemy shields, filled the air. The Celtic warriors lost many men, but held their line. This was planned. They were put in the center because they could take hard hits while staying together, pull swords. The Roman front men drew their gladii from scabbards with one big sound of metal on leather. Move forward. The last push started. No more throwing weapons now. This would be the hand-to-hand killing at which Romans were the best. The gladius was made for stabbing in tight lines, sliding between ribs or into throats with deadly speed. Roman training focused on working as a team more than being a single hero. Each man protected the sides of his friends while attacking the enemy in front of him. The lines crashed together with the special sounds of old battles, the thud of shields, the clang of metal, the grunts of hard work, and the screams of hurt men. But something strange happened. Instead of breaking under the Roman push, the Celtic center took the hit, then began a planned fighting retreat. This was not running away. The Celtic warriors were doing exactly what Hannibal told them. Fight hard at first, then slowly give ground, pulling the eager Romans deeper into the trap. Their longswords needed more room to swing than Roman weapons, so they purposely made space, making the Romans want to follow. They are pulling back, Roman officers shouted. Push harder, chase them. To Roman leaders, this looked like proof they were winning. Barbarian bravery was no match for Roman training. The small mess in the Carthaginian center seemed to show that victory was close. As the Romans pushed forward, their lines began to change. The maniple system was made to move easily, but in their excitement. To use what looked like success, the soldiers made their lines tighter, slowly turning into a wedge-shaped mass pushing into the Carthaginian center. Polybius tells what happened. The Romans kept chasing their success and kept pushing forward, slowly getting out of order as they followed the pulling back enemy. Roman soldiers in the center felt themselves pushed forward by friends behind them, while those on the sides found themselves pulled inward. The nice checkerboard pattern slowly turned into a thick, hard-to-move mass, just as Hannibal had planned. by mid-morning, around 10 o'clock. Temperature had gone up a lot, getting close to 30 degrees C or 86 degrees F. For men fighting in bronze helmets and body armor, the heat was making them very weak. Every move became harder, every breath more difficult. Sweat ran down faces, hurting eyes, and making gear slippery. Here, the Roman strength of same gear became a problem. Their bronze armor and big shields gave great protection, but held heat against the body. The very tight lines stopped air from moving, making a group of overheating men pushing forward. Carthaginian soldiers, especially those from Africa and Spain, were used to strong heat. Their gear was usually lighter. Their more open lines let air move better. They were better at saving water and handling heat. As the battle went on, these differences would decide who won. The hard pushing went on for almost 2 hours. To the Romans, victory looked sure. They were pushing the enemy back, staying together and causing many deaths. But with each step forward, each yard gained, they went deeper into Hannibal's trap. Around 11:30 a.m., with the trap springs, African infantry reveals Hannibal's master plan. Temperatures getting close to 35 degrees C and 95 degrees F, the battle reached its most important moment. The Roman center had moved forward almost half a mile, pushing deep into what looked like a breaking Carthaginian line. The Celtic and Spanish foot soldiers kept their planned retreat, giving just enough fight to keep the Romans attacking straight ahead. Varro, watching from his place with the horse soldiers on the right side, felt victory growing in his heart. We have them. Their center cannot hold much longer. But something was happening on the sides, something the Romans had not expected. With Roman soldiers fully busy chasing the pulling back center, Hannibal closed his trap. The African foot soldiers hidden on both sides turned inward in perfect timing, attacking the Roman sides with weapons and ways taken from Romans. The way this was done was amazing. These soldiers had to ignore the fight in front of them, keep perfect lines while turning 90 degrees, then attack in time with horse soldiers coming around both sides. This hard move needed great training and exact timing. The moment of understanding came. For Roman soldiers, when they suddenly found themselves fighting enemies who looked and fought just like themselves. Africans wearing taken Roman armor, carrying taken Roman weapons, using taken Roman ways. The mind shock was terrible. They are behind us. We are attacked on the sides. Hold lines. Confusion moved fast through Roman groups as soldiers tried to understand how enemies had come to their weak sides. The African foot soldiers pushed inward like the closing jaws of a tool, squeezing the Roman mass from both sides. At the same time, the horse soldier fights on. Both sides ended with very bad results for Rome. On the left side, Hannibal's Numidian horse soldiers had fought and quickly beaten the Roman riders. These light riders, riding without saddles or bridles, showed the speed that made them famous in the Old World. After breaking the Roman horse soldiers, they rode around to attack the Roman back. On the right side, Celtic and Spanish heavy horse soldiers crushed their Roman enemies with more numbers and better teamwork. Hasdrubal, leading this side, showed great smart thinking. After beating the Roman right, he led his horse soldiers all the way around the battlefield to hit the last Roman horse soldiers from behind. The full circle was done. By noon, complete encirclement, Rome's greatest army becomes trapped Roman soldiers found themselves completely closed in. What had started as a sure attack had become a desperate fight to stay alive. The hunters had become the ones hunted. Varro, seeing the disaster happening, managed to run away with about 70 horse soldiers, a choice that would save his life but ruin his name in history. His co-consul, hurt early in the fight, made the hard choice to die with his men instead of running. For the closed-in Romans, the battle situation got worse very fast. The very depth of their lines, meant to be a strength, became a deadly weakness. As pushing came from all sides, the Roman army was squeezed into a tighter and tighter mass. The real feeling was like a nightmare. Roman legions made for easy moving found themselves squeezed into thick groups. Single soldiers had almost no room to swing their swords while back rows pushed forward, making dangerous crowding. A Roman soldier's words, saved in small pieces, tell the horror. We could not lift our arms to hit. We could not step back to make fighting room. We were pushed so close, I felt my ribs would break. Men died standing up because there was no space to fall. The squeezing became deadly. Roman lines became so thick that many soldiers could not use their weapons well. Back rows pushed forward while front rows had nowhere to go, making crushing pressure that killed as well as enemy weapons. Men died from not getting air, crushed by the weight of their own army. Heat sickness became a big killer. Roman soldiers in full armor packed close together started falling from too much heat, even without wounds. Water was cut off, making thirst deadly. Some men drank from pools of blood in desperation. Later stories say the noise became too much. Clanging metal, screaming hurt men, orders shouted in many languages, horse hooves, and the strange sound of 100,000 men fighting for their lives in smaller and smaller space. Chaos covered the battlefield. Dust clouds hid most of the fighting. Roman flags, usually easy to see for orders, were lost in the dust. Soldiers could not see past the men right next to them, making it impossible to know what was happening. From his high spot, Hannibal watched his perfect plan work. The double circle attack known in Old War, but never done well against a trained professional army, was working perfectly. His soldiers from many lands, speaking different languages and using different weapons, moved together in deadly teamwork. "Now we collect the harvest," he said quietly to his officers. The battle's last part was less the slaughter. 70,000 Romans die in history's most efficient battle, planned moving than planned killing. Romans squeezed into thick groups with no way to run, could only fight and die where they stood. From noon until about 3 p.m. the killing went on under the hot summer sun. Carthaginian soldiers, still in good order and trained, calmly finished off Roman men who were still alive. Hannibal had taught his men to hit the open parts of Roman armor: the armpit, the groin, the back of the knee. Each hit was made to kill fast and well. The field itself became hard to move on. Square miles of dead bodies, Roman gear, and Carthaginian loot. The rocky ground, baked hard by heat, was now wet with blood. Men slipped and fell on guts and cut off arms and legs. The smell of death, blood, waste, and opened insides hung heavy in the air. Some Romans, in last desperation, tried to put their heads in the dirt to stop the crushing or to not see their friends being killed. Livy says that several thousand tried this but were calmly killed by Carthaginian soldiers. Consul Paulus fought to the end. Found among piles of Roman dead, he had fought to the last, his body full of wounds and surrounded by the bodies of his guards, men who chose death over shame. By late afternoon, it was over. The silence that came after was almost as bad as the battle's noise, just the groans of the dying and the calm sound of Carthaginian soldiers giving quick deaths or killing prisoners. The numbers are hard to believe. Of 86,000 Roman and allied foot soldiers, about 70,000 lay dead on the field. Carthaginian losses were about 6,000, a kill number of more than 10 to 1, never seen before in old wars. As the sun went down on August 2nd, Cannae showed a sight never seen in old fighting. Polybius, writing from later stories, tried hard to explain the size. Never before had so many Roman citizens died in one day. The legions had walked right into the mouth of the trap. Now closed in and squeezed, the greatest army in Roman history had been calmly wiped out. The battle was over. The killing was just beginning. As night came over Cannae, a strange silence replaced the day's noise. Where aftermath and legacy, how Rome's defeat forged an empire 170,000 men had fought with anger, now only the moans of the dying broke the quiet. The battlefield had become a monument to killing on a size never seen before. The counting started at sunrise. Hannibal's soldiers calmly took gear from Roman dead bodies, collecting weapons and counting deaths. Each cut off ring finger, Romans' war. Special citizen rings meant not just a death, but the end of Roman voting rights. The numbers were too big to believe. 70,000 Roman and allied dead, 10,000 more taken prisoner. The best young men of Rome, senators, knights, officers, and centurions lay rotting under the Apulian sun. Among them consul Lucius Aemilius Paulus, who chose to die with his men instead of running in shame. Polybius would later write, "The ground was covered with blood and dead bodies and showed a terrible sight even to the enemy. Bodies lay so thick that..." Later Romans said you could walk across the battlefield without touching the ground. Summer heat made bodies rot fast, making a smell that went for miles. Carthaginian soldiers covered their faces with cloth as they worked. Carrion birds came in such huge numbers they made the sky dark, making their own world of death. In his command tent, Hannibal received happy words from his officers. The victory was even better than he had hoped. Roman army power had been broken in one afternoon. The road to Rome itself was open. It was then that Mahabal's warning, the famous quote that changed history. Mahabal, leader of the Numidian horse soldiers, made his famous request. "Let me go forward right now with the horse soldiers. In 5 days, you will eat dinner in the capital." Hannibal, tired from battle and maybe shocked by his own success, answered, "I need time to think about it." Mahabal's answer rang through history. "You know how to win a battle, Hannibal, but you do not know how to use a victory." This moment, this waiting would be talked about for hundreds of years. The chance made by Cannae would never come again. Rome, given time to get stronger, would never again risk everything in one battle. Meanwhile, Consul Varro's trip back to Rome became a walk through national pain. Villages emptied when he came near. Farmers left their fields. The news he brought was too bad to believe. When word reached Rome on August 4th, fear exploded. People ran from the city, afraid Hannibal would come soon. Markets closed, public buildings emptied. Some senators got ready to leave the country. The very base of the Republic seemed to fall apart, but what happened next would change the path of history. Rome did not give up. Instead, something Rome's resilience, the Senate's defiance, that saved the Republic amazing happened. The Senate met the same day the news came, passed emergency rules and made Marcus Junius Pyrrha dictator with full powers. Livy records the Senate's words, "We shall fight on. Rome does not make peace while enemy armies stand on Italian land." This brave stand, born from having no choice, showed the real strength of Rome. Not its legions, but its system that could keep going. While Hannibal was master of short battles, Rome was master of the bigger art of never giving up. The Republic made big changes. No more looking for one big battle, going back to Fabian ways of bothering and wearing down the enemy. Better spy work, better teamwork between many armies. In a strange way, Cannae being so complete made Carthage lose. The size of the killing made Romans believe Carthage wanted to destroy them completely, making any talking peace impossible. Hannibal had won too much. His perfect battle plan made the opposite of what he wanted. Instead of making Rome talk peace, it started a total war effort that could not be stopped. Hannibal thought Cannae would show Rome was weak. Instead, it showed Rome would never quit. The biggest twist of Cannae is how ultimate irony, how Hannibal's victory doomed Carthage. Rome's final win used lessons learned from Hannibal himself. The Republic that Hannibal almost destroyed ended up using his smart war ideas. When Scipio Africanus finally beat Carthage, he used battle ways copied from Hannibal's own plans. But Rome's new use of horse soldiers, moving lines, and armies from many lands all came from the hard lessons of Cannae. 2,000 years later, army schools still study Hannibal's perfect battle plan, while people who study governments look at Rome's system strength. Both lessons still matter. The search for one big win still excites army leaders, while the value of strong systems shapes big war plans. Cannae teaches us that history's greatest battles are often the ones that do not reach their goals, pushing history down new roads. Hannibal's perfect win doomed Carthage to destruction while building the Roman Empire that would rule the Mediterranean for hundreds of years. The story of Cannae is more than a story of war genius. It is a lesson that never grows old about the danger of too much pride. For more stories of empires and their deadly mistakes, subscribe to Dark History Class and turn on notifications. The past is waiting to be remembered.